The scorching Virginia sun beat down on Fort Bragg's elite training grounds as 8-year-old Jasmine Williams stood before Colonel Harrison, her small frame dwarfed by the imposing military compound. The colonel's laughter echoed across the range when she asked to shoot. "Little girls don't belong here," he sneered, his gray eyes cold as winter steel. But Jasmine's steady gaze never wavered. In her worn backpack lay a faded photograph. Her father, in SEAL uniform, the best marksman the Navy had ever seen. What happened next would shatter every record in military history and silence a base full of doubters forever. What would you do if the whole world told you that you didn't belong? Jasmine Williams wasn't like other 8-year-olds. While her classmates played with dolls and video games, she sat alone in the corner of the playground, tracing invisible trajectories in the air with her small fingers. Her deep brown skin glistened with sweat in the North Carolina heat, but she never removed the oversized Army surplus jacket that hung past her knees. It had belonged to her father, and wearing it made her feel like he was still there, wrapping her in his protection. Her grandmother Esther had tried to convince her to wear something more suitable for the weather, but Jasmine refused. The jacket still smelled faintly of gun oil and her father's cologne, and that was worth any discomfort. She lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment 3 miles from Fort Bragg's main gate, close enough to hear reveille every morning at 0600 hours. Her room was nothing like what you'd expect from a child her age. No posters of pop stars or cartoon characters adorned the walls. Instead, carefully pinned diagrams showed bullet trajectories, wind drift calculations, and ballistic charts. A well-worn copy of the Marine Corps' marksmanship manual sat on her nightstand, its pages soft from countless readings. Her teachers worried about her obsession with military science, suggesting she try more age-appropriate activities. They didn't understand that for Jasmine, this wasn't a hobby. It was a connection to the father she'd lost. Her appearance contradicted every stereotype of a military prodigy. Standing barely 4 feet tall, she moved with the deliberate precision of someone who had learned that every motion costs energy, and energy must be conserved for what matters. Her hair was styled in neat cornrows, each braid ending with a small wooden bead that clicked softly when she walked. These beads had been her father's idea, a way to teach her about sound discipline. Even the smallest noise can give away your position, he'd told her when she was 5. Now, she moved so carefully that the beads rarely made a sound. At school, the other children kept their distance. They called her weird, strange, too serious for a kid. During recess, while they ran and screamed, Jasmine would sit under the old oak tree with her leather journal, sketching range cards and calculating mil-dot holds for different distances. The journal had been her father's gift on her 6th birthday, along with his first lesson on reading wind. She remembered his massive hands guiding her small ones as she wrote her first ballistic calculation. Now, 2 years later, the journal was nearly full, its pages covered with equations and observations that would impress a trained sniper. In her jacket pocket, she always carried her most precious possession, her father's SEAL trident. The gold eagle clutched a pistol, a trident, and an anchor, symbols of the SEAL's mastery over air, sea, and land. Chief Petty Officer Marcus Williams had earned this pin after completing the most grueling training in the military. He'd worn it with pride through 3 deployments to Afghanistan, where he'd become a legend among Special Operations Forces. To the Navy, he was the phantom sniper who never missed. To Jasmine, he was simply Daddy, the man who taught her that excellence had no color, no gender, no age, only dedication. Her grandmother often found her in the backyard after school, setting up elaborate shooting scenarios with tin cans and her slingshot. Jasmine would lie prone on the grass for hours, controlling her breathing, waiting for the perfect moment between heartbeats to release. She never missed anymore. The neighbors thought it was a game, but Esther knew better. She saw Marcus in every deliberate movement, every calculated decision. It scared her sometimes, seeing such intensity in someone so young. But she also knew this was Jasmine's way of keeping her father alive, of proving she was worthy of his legacy. 2 years had passed since Chief Petty Officer Marcus Williams died in what the Navy called a training accident. Jasmine had been too young to attend the funeral, but she remembered the flag-draped coffin, the sharp crack of rifle volleys, the mournful notes of taps floating across Arlington National Cemetery. She remembered her grandmother's tears, the way strong men in dress uniforms couldn't meet her eyes, the whispered conversations that stopped when she entered a room. Most of all, she remembered the promise she'd made at her father's bedside. "I'll shoot straight and true, Daddy, no matter who tries to stop me." The official report claimed equipment malfunctioned during a live-fire exercise at Fort Bragg's Special Operations Compound. A rifle had misfired, sending a round into Marcus Williams's chest. The investigation concluded it was a tragic accident, that all safety protocols had been followed. But Jasmine had inherited more than her father's marksmanship skills. She'd inherited his analytical mind. She'd overheard hushed phone calls, seen the guilt in Master Chief Rodriguez's eyes when he visited, noticed how certain names were never mentioned in her house anymore. Her young mind processed these fragments like ballistic data, calculating trajectories of truth through the fog of official stories. Her father had started training her when she was 4 years old, not with real weapons, he was too responsible for that, but with the fundamentals that separated good shooters from great ones. He taught her to read wind by watching leaves dance, to judge distance by the size of familiar objects, to control her breathing until her heartbeat slowed to a marksman's rhythm. "Your mind is the weapon," he'd say during their backyard sessions. "Everything else is just tools to extend your will." He'd set up miniature ranges with toy soldiers, teaching her about mil dots and minute of angle adjustments, using her toy telescope. Other fathers played catch with their daughters. Marcus Williams taught his to calculate bullet drop over distance. The transformation had been gradual but undeniable. By 5, Jasmine could estimate distances within 5% accuracy. By 6, she could call wind speed and direction better than some trained spotters. By 7, she was reading advanced ballistics manuals, understanding concepts that challenged military academy cadets. Her father documented everything, filling notebooks with her progress, videos of her form, charts of her improvement. He wasn't trying to create a child soldier. He was passing on excellence to the next generation, ensuring his knowledge wouldn't die with him. In his final weeks, Marcus had seemed different. The easy smile that lit up their small apartment came less frequently. He spent long hours in his study, organizing files, recording videos, writing in journals he then locked away. Jasmine would find him staring at her sometimes, his eyes filled with an emotion she was too young to identify as prescient grief. One night, she woke to find him sitting on her bed, watching her sleep. "Promise me something, baby girl," he'd whispered. "Promise me you'll never let anyone tell you what you can't do. Not because of your age, not because of your color, not because you're a girl. Excellence recognizes excellence, and you've got it in your blood." The night before he died, Marcus gave Jasmine a sealed envelope. "Keep this safe," he said. "Don't open it unless something happens to me." She'd hidden it behind her ballistics charts, trying not to think about why her invincible father would say such things. The next day, Colonel Harrison himself had come to their door, his dress uniform immaculate, his words carefully rehearsed. "Training accident. Nothing could be done. Deepest condolences." The envelope had burned like a coal in Jasmine's dresser drawer, but she honored her father's wish and kept it sealed. After the funeral, boxes arrived from Fort Bragg. Marcus's personal effects, they said. Most were mundane. Uniforms, books, photos. But hidden in a false bottom of his footlocker, Jasmine discovered treasure. Hundreds of hours of training videos her father had recorded. Not official military content, but personal lessons meant for her. Jasmine's Marksmanship Academy, he'd called it. His voice warm with love even through the computer speakers. Each video built on the last, taking her from basic fundamentals to advanced concepts that would challenge seasoned snipers. It was as if he'd known he wouldn't be there to teach her in person. She devoted herself to these lessons with religious intensity. Every day after school, while other kids watched cartoons, Jasmine absorbed her father's wisdom. She learned about spindrift and the Coriolis effect, about how humidity affects bullet flight, about reading mirage to judge wind at distance. Her grandmother worried about the obsession, but couldn't deny the focus it gave her granddaughter. Jasmine's grades improved as she applied the same discipline to schoolwork. Her teachers noted her exceptional ability in physics and mathematics, not knowing these subjects were just bullet flight by another name. The revelation came 6 months after the funeral. Master Chief Rodriguez had appeared at their door, disheveled and reeking of whiskey. Esther had tried to turn him away, but Jasmine recognized the pain in his eyes, the same pain she saw in the mirror every morning. "I was his spotter," Rodriguez had said, his voice broken. "I should have seen it coming." They couldn't stand being shown up by him day after day, the perfect shots, the impossible hits, and he was getting attention, maybe a promotion to officer. He'd trailed off, but Jasmine understood. Her father hadn't died from equipment failure. He'd died from excellence while black. When Fort Bragg announced its annual open range day, Jasmine knew it was time. 2 years of preparation, of honoring her father's legacy in secret, had led to this moment. The event was meant for positive publicity, letting civilians tour the facilities, watch demonstrations, maybe fire a few rounds under strict supervision. But Jasmine saw it as something more. A chance to stand where her father had stood, to prove that his gift lived on, to force acknowledgement from those who'd tried to bury his brilliance, along with his body. Her grandmother had been reluctant, knowing Jasmine's intentions went beyond simple tourism. But she also knew her granddaughter had inherited the Williams' determination. When Jasmine showed up at breakfast wearing her father's jacket despite the forecasted 90-degree heat, Esther simply nodded. Some battles you don't fight because you know you've already lost. They drove to Fort Bragg in silence, Jasmine clutching her father's trident pin, Esther gripping the steering wheel like a lifeline. The base sprawled before them like a small city, all order and purpose. Jasmine felt her father's presence in every building, every carefully maintained lawn, every soldier who passed. This had been his world, where he'd excelled despite every obstacle, where he'd proven that excellence knows no color, where he'd died for that proof. As they approached the shooting range, Jasmine saw him, Colonel Harrison, holding court with civilians, his silver eagles gleaming in the morning sun, the man who'd delivered the news of her father's death, who'd signed the reports calling it an accident, who'd stood at the funeral with dry eyes while Jasmine's world collapsed. Taking her grandmother's hand, Jasmine walked forward. Each step was measured, controlled, the beats in her hair silent as death. She'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times, but reality hit different. The smell of gun oil and cordite, the crack of distant rifle fire, the buzz of military efficiency, it all crashed over her like a wave. This was her father's world, and she was about to claim her place in it. The crowd parted unconsciously as she approached, something in her bearing demanding space despite her size. Colonel Harrison was mid-sentence, boasting about the base's training standards, when Jasmine's voice cut through like a precision shot. "Colonel Harrison, sir, I'd like to use your shooting range." The laughter started immediately, spreading through the crowd like wildfire. Colonel Harrison turned, his gray eyes taking in the small black girl in an oversized army jacket, and his laugh was the loudest of all. It rolled across the range like thunder, deep and dismissive and cruel. "You want to use our range?" He bent down, his 6'4" frame looming over her like a monument to institutional power. "Little girl, this isn't a carnival game. These are weapons of war, not toys for children playing soldier." Jasmine didn't flinch. Her amber-brown eyes held his gaze steady as a rifle scope. "I know what they are, sir. My father taught me. Chief Petty Officer Marcus Williams. He used to shoot here." She watched recognition flicker across Harrison's face, watched his laughter die as memories surfaced. The colonel straightened, his expression hardening from amusement to something colder. Marcus Williams's daughter. The words tasted bitter in his mouth. Around them, other military personnel began to take notice, some recognizing the name. "Well, that explains the delusion. Your father was a statistical anomaly, and anomalies don't repeat, especially not in little girls who should be playing with dolls instead of disrespecting this institution with impossible requests." The crowd grew larger, phones appearing in hands as people sensed drama unfolding. Officers gathered behind their colonel, a wall of uniformed authority against one small girl. Someone called for the rangemaster, and Sergeant Mueller appeared, 20 years of experience etched in the lines of her face. Jasmine had hoped another woman might understand, might see past the surface to the dedication beneath. That hope died quickly. "Sweetie," Mueller said, her condescension sharp as a blade, "I've been doing this for 20 years. You're what, 7? 8? The recoil from these weapons would break your shoulder, knock you flat on your back. Why don't you try the gift shop? They have toy guns more appropriate for someone your age." Other instructors joined the mockery, each adding their own dismissal like stones on a pile. "It's an insurance liability. We have no protocols for children. What if she gets hurt? The media would crucify us. This is clearly attention-seeking behavior. Someone should call child services." Each comment drew laughs, nods, agreement that this little girl had overstepped boundaries that shouldn't need explaining. The touring families proved even crueler. Parents pulled their children away as if Jasmine's ambition was a contagious disease. She heard the whispers, each one a bullet finding its mark. Some people just don't know their place. Probably wants to sue us, using her dead father for attention. Disgusting. Those people always want special treatment. Look at her, dressed up like she's playing army. The words hurt worse than any physical blow, each one calculated to remind her she didn't belong. A group of teenage boys in ROTC uniforms pushed to the front, their young faces twisted with the casual cruelty of those who've never faced real adversity. "Look, it's G.I. Barbie," one called out. "Does your gun shoot rainbows?" Another added. "Maybe she thinks this is a video game. Someone tell her there's no respawn in real life." Their laughter was high and vicious, the sound of future officers learning to discriminate before they learned to lead. Through it all, Jasmine stood perfectly still, her breathing controlled, her face expressionless. She'd learned from her father's videos that sometimes the best defense was no reaction at all. Let them exhaust themselves, let them reveal their character while she maintained hers. Her grandmother's hand trembled in hers, and Jasmine squeezed gently, offering comfort she couldn't feel herself. Inside, her heart raged against the injustice, but outside, she was a statue of dignity. The situation escalated when someone with a press badge pushed through. A local blogger, there to cover the feel-good story of military-civilian relations, sensed a different narrative. "Are you trying to make a political statement?" he demanded, shoving a phone in Jasmine's face. "Is this about gun control? Black Lives Matter? Are you using your father's death to push an agenda?" Jasmine's response was measured, her voice steady despite the storm inside. "I just want to shoot, sir, like my father did, to honor his memory through excellence, not politics." The blogger smirked, sensing blood in the water. "Your father was killed in a training accident, wasn't he? Maybe weapons aren't in your family's genetics after all. Maybe that's why he's dead. Couldn't handle the pressure of being where he didn't belong?" The crowd gasped at the cruelty, but no one intervened. Jasmine felt her grandmother's sharp intake of breath, felt her own hands form fists inside her jacket pockets. The trident pin bit into her palm, its edges sharp enough to draw blood. But she didn't move, didn't react, didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. Her father had taught her that the best shot comes from a place of absolute stillness. Then she saw him, standing at the edge of the crowd like a ghost from the past. Master Chief Rodriguez, her father's spotter, his weather-beaten face a map of guilt and regret. Their eyes met across the sea of hostile faces, and she saw recognition, saw memory, saw something that might have been shame. He didn't laugh. He didn't mock. He just stood there, bearing witness to history repeating itself. Colonel Harrison, riding high on the crowd's energy, decided to deliver what he thought would be the killing blow. "Tell you what, little girl, let's make this interesting. If you can even lift one of our training rifles, just lift it, not shoot it. I'll personally eat my insignia, but when you fail, and you will fail, you and your grandmother leave and never come back. You stop disrespecting your father's memory with these delusions. Deal?" The crowd fell silent, waiting for Jasmine to crumble, to run crying to her grandmother, to finally accept the reality they'd constructed for her. Instead, she reached into her jacket and pulled out her father's trident, holding it high where everyone could see. The gold caught the sunlight, throwing reflections across suddenly uncertain faces. "Deal, Colonel, but when I succeed you'll let me shoot 5 rounds at 500 meters, and afterward you'll tell me the truth about how my father died." The silence that followed was different, charged with sudden tension, with questions unasked. Harrison's face went white. Around him, officers exchanged glances. Someone whispered, "What truth?" The crowd buzzed with confusion, the narrative shifting beneath their feet. This wasn't just about a little girl wanting to shoot anymore. This was about secrets, about cover-ups, about sins coming home to roost. Jasmine let the moment stretch, reading the crowd like wind patterns. She saw doubt creeping into hostile faces, saw some beginning to question what they thought they knew. Her father had taught her that sometimes the best shot was the one that made the enemy reveal their position. Harrison had just shown his. In the bathroom stall, with her grandmother standing guard outside, Jasmine finally let herself feel the weight of what she'd just endured. Her small body shook with suppressed sobs as she gripped the cold porcelain sink. Everything hurt, not physically but in places armor couldn't protect. The laughter echoed in her skull, each dismissive word a wound that wouldn't show. She pulled out her father's photograph, taken at this very range, his smile bright with pride after setting another record. "I'm sorry, Daddy," she whispered to the image. "I'm not strong enough. I'm just a little girl and they all know it." The bathroom door opened, and her grandmother's weathered hands found her shoulders. Esther Williams had buried a husband in Korea and a son in Arlington. She'd faced down racism in the Jim Crow South and sexism in the civil rights movement. But seeing her granddaughter broken on a bathroom floor hurt worse than all of it combined. "Baby girl," she said softly, "we can go home. You don't have to prove anything to these people. Your daddy wouldn't want you suffering like this." For a moment, Jasmine considered it. The weight of her father's legacy felt unbearable, like trying to lift a rifle meant for someone 3 times her size. She could go home, be normal, play with toys instead of calculating trajectories. She could let his memory rest, let the official story stand, let the men who killed him win. The trident in her pocket felt like an anchor, dragging her down into depths she wasn't ready to explore. Outside the bathroom, Harrison's voice carried through the walls. He was joking with his staff, his confidence restored by her absence. Can you imagine Marcus Williams's kid thinking she inherited his skill? Genetics don't work that way. Thank God we stopped that bloodline from continuing in the teams. One anomaly was enough. We don't need them thinking they belong here. That sentence, "stopped that bloodline," ignited something primal in Jasmine's chest. She looked at her reflection in the mirror and saw her father's eyes staring back. The same eyes that had spotted targets at impossible distances, that had saved countless lives with impossible shots, that had closed for the last time because mediocre men couldn't stand being surpassed by black excellence. In her mind, she heard his voice from the training videos, steady and sure. When they tell you no, you show them yes. When they say impossible, you make it inevitable. She stood slowly, wiped her tears with deliberate care, and straightened her father's jacket. The weight that had seemed unbearable moments ago now felt like armor. "Grandma," she said, her voice carrying new steel, "I'm not leaving. Not until I take my shots. Not until they know who Marcus Williams was. Not until they know who I am." Esther saw her son in her granddaughter's stance. The same straight spine, the same lifted chin, the same quiet determination that had carried him through SEAL training despite instructors who wanted him to quit. She nodded once, understanding that some battles choose you whether you're ready or not. "Then we go back out there, baby, with our heads high, like Williams always do." Jasmine emerged from the bathroom transformed. The shaking child was gone, replaced by Marcus Williams' daughter, heir to a legacy written in precise shots and unshakable dignity. She walked past the smirking crowd without acknowledging their existence, past the cameras still recording, straight toward the armory where the training rifles waited. Each step was measured, controlled, the beads in her hair clicking a rhythm like a countdown to revelation. Master Chief Rodriguez stepped from the shadows as she passed. His voice was barely a whisper, meant only for her ears. "Your father would be proud. The rifle you want is in Cage 7, Barrett M82A1. It was his favorite." He paused, swallowed hard. "I owe him that much. I owe him so much more, but this is all I can give." Jasmine didn't ask what he meant, not yet. First, she had records to break, truths to force into the light, a father to honor. The crowd followed like a tide, their mockery subdued by her transformation. Even Harrison looked uncertain now, perhaps remembering other times he'd underestimated a Williams. The armory door swung open with a metallic groan that silenced the crowd. Inside, rifles stood in neat rows like soldiers at attention, each one precisely maintained, deadly in its perfection. The Barrett M82A1 sat in Cage 7, 15 pounds of precision engineering that had helped make her father a legend. To the crowd, it looked impossibly large next to Jasmine's small frame. To Jasmine, it looked like destiny. Colonel Harrison found his voice, trying to regain control of the narrative. "That's a .50 caliber rifle, girl. It weighs more than a quarter of your body weight. Special operators train for months just to handle it properly. This farce has gone far enough." Jasmine wasn't listening. She approached the rifle with the reverence of a knight approaching Excalibur. Her hands moved with practiced precision, checking the weapon's condition even before lifting it. Clear chamber. Safety engaged. Scope covers secure. Every motion was muscle memory, drilled into her through thousands of repetitions with replica weapons in her backyard. The crowd watched, confused by the professional methodology coming from a child. Then, in one fluid motion that spoke of years of practice, Jasmine lifted the rifle into a perfect standing position. Her small body adjusted automatically, finding the weapon's balance point, distributing its weight along bones and muscles trained for this moment. The rifle that should have toppled her instead became an extension of her will, steady as stone in her small hands. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone dropped their phone. Harrison's jaw fell open, his face cycling through disbelief, anger, and something that might have been fear. That's not possible. You're 8 years old, the physics alone. Physics is very possible, sir, Jasmine said calmly, her voice carrying the same steady authority her father had possessed. Leverage, center of gravity, and proper skeletal alignment. Page 47 of the Marine Corps Marksmanship Manual. My father made me memorize it when I was 6. She shifted the rifle slightly, demonstrating perfect form. Would you like me to quote the section on natural point of aim? The crowd erupted in chaos. Officers demanded explanations. Parents pulled out phones to record. The ROTC boys who'd mocked her stood slack-jawed. Through it all, Jasmine remained motionless, the rifle steady in her hands, her breathing controlled. She was the eye of a hurricane she'd created with simple competence. Trapped by his own hubris and the dozens of recording phones, Harrison had no choice but to follow through. His voice cracked as he spoke. Fine, 5 shots, 50 meters. If you can even hit the target once, I'll consider it a miracle and let you walk away with some dignity. Jasmine's response chilled the veterans present, each word precise as a bullet. 50 meters is a zero wind confirmation distance, sir. Practically point blank for this weapon system. Make it 500 meters, full value wind, and I'll need a spotter to call conditions, though I can calculate them myself if necessary. Master Chief Rodriguez stepped forward before Harrison could object. I'll spot for her. His voice carried command authority that silenced protests. I owe her father that much. I owe him the truth he died for. He looked directly at Harrison as he spoke, and something passed between them. A recognition of debts unpaid, sins unconfessed. As Jasmine set up on the range, her movements were meditation in motion. She adjusted the rifle's bipod with millimeter precision, her small body conforming to the weapon like water filling a container. Veterans in the crowd began whispering, recognizing form that was textbook perfect, impossible for an untrained child, yet undeniable in its execution. She looked like her father, they said, moved like him, had the same stillness before the shot. Rodriguez sat up beside her, his voice professional despite the emotion underneath. Wind 3 miles per hour, left to right, gusting to 5, humidity 67%, temperature 82 degrees, barometric pressure 29.92 inches of mercury, Jasmine finished. Density, altitude approximately 1,800 feet. Target is a standard E-dipole silhouette at 500 meters. Elevation adjustment needed, 3.2 minutes up. Windage, half minute left. She made the adjustments without looking at the scope's markings, her fingers finding the turrets by touch alone. The range fell silent except for the whisper of wind through grass. Jasmine's breathing slowed, her heart rate dropping to the marksman's rhythm her father had taught her. In through the nose, hold, out through the mouth. Each breath smaller than the last until she existed in the natural respiratory pause, that moment of perfect stillness between heartbeats where excellence lived. Time crystallized. The crowd faded. The world narrowed to the fundamental relationship between shooter and target. Jasmine found the spot her father had shown her, that place beyond thought where action and intent merged. She didn't pull the trigger. She pressed it, straight back with steadily increasing pressure until the rifle decided its own moment of release. The Barrett roared, its concussion slapping across the range like divine judgment. The crowd flinched. Jasmine didn't, riding the recoil like a wave, already settling back for the next shot. Center mass hit, Rodriguez called, his voice cracking with emotion. Dead center, point of aim, point of impact, no adjustment needed. The crowd erupted. Harrison went pale as parchment. Someone whispered, "Jesus Christ." Another said, "That's impossible." But Jasmine was already settling into her next shot, unhearing, uncaring, lost in the zen of perfect performance. The second shot split her first bullet hole, the precision so perfect that Rodriguez had to use the spotting scope's maximum magnification to confirm it. The third created a perfect triangle with the others. The fourth drew a line exactly 2 inches up. By the fifth shot, Jasmine had drawn her father's initials, M1, in the target's center, each bullet hole precisely placed, a signature written in lead and powder. She saved the weapon and stood in one smooth motion, the rifle cradled with professional care. The range was tomb-silent, even the wind seeming to hold its breath. 500 yards. 5 shots. Perfection that most trained snipers couldn't achieve on their best day, delivered by an 8-year-old girl they'd tried to dismiss. "Impossible," Harrison whispered, the word falling from numb lips. "You're 8 years old. This can't be real." "Age is irrelevant to excellence, sir," Jasmine replied, her young voice carrying ancient wisdom. "My father started teaching me when I was 4. He said talent was just focused practice combined with proper instruction. 10,000 repetitions make a reflex. I've done 50,000. She paused, letting the numbers sink in. "Would you like to see what I can do at 1,000 meters? Or should we move directly to the conversation about how my father really died?" Rodriguez spoke into the silence, his words heavy with suppressed guilt. "Show them the other thing, Jasmine. Show them what your father taught you that no one else could do." Without hesitation, Jasmine turned her back to the target downrange. Rodriguez produced a small mirror, holding it at an angle. Using only the mirror's reflection, shooting over her shoulder, Jasmine put 5 more rounds through the same ragged hole, each shot perfect despite the impossible angle. It was her father's signature trick, the one that had made him famous in special operations circles. The one that proved marksmanship was as much mental as physical. "My father said excellence makes small men feel small," Jasmine said as she safed the rifle for the final time. "He said they'd try to destroy what they couldn't possess. He was right, wasn't he, Colonel Harrison?" The colonel's facade crumbled like a dam breached. Surrounded by witnesses, trapped by cameras, confronted by proof of what he'd tried to bury, truth spilled from him like blood from a wound. "Your father was the best marksman I ever saw. He made us all look like amateurs. Some people couldn't handle being shown up by a black operator." The training accident. Rodriguez finished what Harrison couldn't. Wasn't an accident. "Jasmine, your father died exposing a conspiracy to keep minorities out of sniper positions. He had evidence, recordings, documents. He was going to testify. They made it look like equipment failure, but 3 of us know the truth. Your father died because he wouldn't accept limitations, wouldn't stay in the box they built for him." The crowd's energy shifted from mockery to horror. Phones that had been recording a child's humiliation now captured confession of murder. Parents covered children's ears. Officers stepped away from Harrison as if his guilt was contagious. Jasmine stood in the center of it all, small and dignified and terrifying in her composure. She could have destroyed them all. The evidence Rodriguez mentioned, she knew where it was now, hidden in that sealed envelope her father had given her. She could have called for arrests, lawsuits, congressional hearings. She could have burned Fort Bragg's reputation to ash and salted the earth behind her. The crowd waited for the child they'd mocked to become the avenging angel they deserved. Instead, Jasmine set down the rifle with infinite care and faced Colonel Harrison. "My father wouldn't want revenge. He'd want change. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to create the Marcus Williams Memorial Scholarship for Minority Marksmen, full funding for training, equipment, and advancement. Master Chief Rodriguez will oversee it, and he'll select candidates based on excellence, not ethnicity. But excellence from everywhere, not just where you're comfortable looking." She turned to the cameras, still recording, her young voice carrying the authority of truth. "Everyone watching needs to understand something. Excellence comes in all colors, all ages, all packages. My father died because some people couldn't accept that fact. But stopping one person doesn't stop the truth. It just makes it stronger. I'm 8 years old and I just outshot your best. Imagine what I'll do at 18. Imagine what others like me will do if you just give them the chance." Harrison stood broken, his career destroyed, his secrets exposed, his worldview shattered by a child he'd dismissed. Around him, the structures of institutional racism creaked under the weight of witnessed truth. "The scholarship," he managed to say. "It'll be done. Everything you asked." "Good," Jasmine said simply. "And Colonel, the next time a little black girl asks to use your range, maybe try saying yes." As Jasmine walked away, her grandmother's hand warm in hers, the crowd parted like the Red Sea. Some saluted. Veterans who recognized excellence regardless of its package. Children stood taller, seeing possibility where before they'd seen only barriers. Parents looked ashamed, confronting their own prejudices in the mirror of a child's dignity. She didn't look back at the wreckage of reputations, the exposed conspiracies, the system shaking on its foundations. She looked forward, toward a future where little black girls wouldn't need to break records just to be seen. Behind them, Rodriguez called out across the silent range. "Jasmine! The SEAL qualification score is 190 out of 200 at 500 meters. You just shot 200, perfect score. Twice." "In case you wanted to know," Jasmine smiled, her father's smile, warm and proud and unshakable. "I know, Master Chief. Daddy told me all the numbers. He said records were meant to be broken, but only if they opened doors for others." "Did I open enough doors today?" Rodriguez's voice broke as he answered, "You opened them all, little sister, every last one." The walk to their car felt like a victory parade, though Jasmine sought no celebration. Phones recorded their passage, already uploading videos that would go viral within hours. By nightfall, the story would circle the globe. The 8-year-old girl who'd exposed murder, shattered records, and chose justice over revenge. But Jasmine wasn't thinking about fame or consequences. She was thinking about her father, about promises kept, about the weight of excellence in a world that feared it. At the car, Esther finally spoke. "Your daddy would be so proud, baby, not just of the shooting. Anyone can learn to shoot, but of how you handled yourself, how you chose to build instead of burn." Jasmine pulled out the sealed envelope her father had given her 2 years ago. She'd thought about opening it in the bathroom when she'd almost given up. Now, with trembling fingers, she broke the seal. Inside was a letter, in her father's careful handwriting, and a flash drive labeled "Insurance." The letter was short. "My brilliant girl, if you're reading this, then they succeeded where bullets failed. But they can't kill what lives in you. The drive contains everything. Names, dates, recordings. Use it wisely. Remember, excellence isn't about being better than others. It's about being better than yourself yesterday. I love you beyond words, beyond time, beyond death. Shoot straight and true. Daddy," Jasmine handed the drive to her grandmother. "Give this to the right people, Grandma, the ones who'll make sure it matters." She kept the letter, folding it carefully and placing it next to the trident in her pocket. 2 pieces of her father, carried close to her heart. As they drove away from Fort Bragg, Jasmine saw a young black girl, maybe 6 years old, watching from behind the fence. Their eyes met, and Jasmine raised her hand in a small salute. The girl saluted back, her small hand sharp and proud. In that moment, Jasmine understood what her father had meant about opening doors. She hadn't just proven herself today. She'd proven possibility itself. 3 months later, the Marcus Williams Memorial Scholarship held its first selection board. 137 applications arrived from across the country. Black, Hispanic, Asian, Native American, and white kids from poor neighborhoods who'd never dreamed of touching precision rifles. Master Chief Rodriguez reviewed each one personally, looking for the spark Marcus had seen in his daughter. His uniform jacket adorned, he found it in more places than anyone expected. Colonel Harrison was quietly retired, his pension reduced, his name scrubbed from honors lists. 3 other officers faced charges. The investigation Jasmine's evidence triggered revealed decades of systematic discrimination, buried reports, silenced witnesses. Marcus Williams received a posthumous Navy Cross, the citation finally telling the truth about his final stand against institutional racism. His real marksmanship records were unsealed, showing scores that still haven't been matched. But the real victory played out in smaller moments across the country. In Detroit, a young boy picked up a pellet gun instead of joining a gang, inspired by Jasmine's discipline. In Houston, a girl asked her father to teach her about physics after seeing the viral video. In Los Angeles, a veteran who'd given up on the system volunteered to train minority youth, remembering what excellence looked like when prejudice couldn't hide it. Jasmine returned to her quiet life, to her backyard range, to her father's videos. She still wore his jacket, still carried his trident, still calculated trajectories in her spare time. But now she wasn't alone. Letters arrived daily, from kids who'd found their own excellence, their own refusal to accept limitations. She answered each one in her careful handwriting, always ending with her father's words: "Shoot straight and true." One evening, as purple clouds painted the North Carolina sky, Jasmine sat with her grandmother on their small porch. The evening news played on Esther's phone, another story about the scholarship recipients, another barrier broken, another door opened. "Do you regret it?" Esther asked. "Not taking the revenge you could have taken?" Jasmine considered the question, her 8-year-old mind holding wisdom earned through loss. "Daddy used to say that the best shot isn't always the kill shot. Sometimes it's the one that changes the battlefield. We changed it, Grandma. Every time a kid who looks like me picks up a rifle and doesn't hear laughter, we win. Every time excellence gets recognized instead of buried, Daddy lives again." In the distance, Fort Bragg's evening colors sounded, the notes of retreat floating across the still air. Once that sound had meant her father coming home. Now it meant something else. A daily reminder that some victories echo longer than gunshots, that some truths refuse to stay buried, that sometimes an 8-year-old girl with steady hands and an unbreakable spirit can shame an entire system into change. As the last note faded, Jasmine stood and walked to her backyard range. She had 10,000 more repetitions to complete, excellence to maintain, a legacy to honor. But first, she paused at her father's photo, now hanging where she practiced. "I kept my promise, Daddy," she whispered. "I shot straight and true. And I'll keep shooting until everyone can." The tin cans waited in the dying light, arranged at different distances, challenging angles. Jasmine picked up her slingshot, controlled her breathing, found the stillness between heartbeats. The first shot rang true, as they all did now. Behind her, Esther smiled and went inside, leaving her granddaughter to practice in peace. Some things were sacred: a father's memory, a daughter's dedication, the slow, patient work of changing the world, one perfect shot at a time. Years would pass. Jasmine would grow, excel, probably become the sniper her father had trained her to be. But this moment, this 8-year-old girl standing in a modest backyard, honoring excellence in defiance of a world that tried to deny it, this was when she truly became Marcus Williams's daughter, not through genetics or training, but through choice. The choice to build instead of burn, to inspire instead of destroy, to prove that excellence, true excellence, recognizes no barriers except the ones we accept. The scholarship recipients would multiply. The barriers would continue to fall. And somewhere, Marcus Williams would rest easier, knowing his baby girl had kept her promise. She'd shot straight and true. She'd opened every door. She'd proved that some legacies are written not in blood or bullets, but in the quiet dignity of refusing to be anything less than excellent. Some battles are won not with power, but with dignity. If you were her, would you forgive?